Hello friends, welcome to Learner's Planet. I welcome you to this third theory session for D and F block elements. In the previous session, we discussed about the oxidation states of these elements, about their ionization energies. In this session, we are going to discuss about the electrode potential values, that is the standard electrode potential values of these elements. Right? So let's start our session here. Electrode potential. What is it? See, it is simply the potential difference between the electrode and its ions in the solution. Right? Now this electrode potential can be the oxidation potential or the reduction potential. Right? What is the oxidation potential? It is the tendency of an electrode to lose electrons. Okay, say this has lost electrons in its solution. Now the potential difference between the electrode and the electrons or its ions, the potential difference between the electrode and its ions. Suppose the electrode is made up of this M metal and the ions are in the solution. So the potential difference between this electrode and the ions is called as what? Oxidation potential. Likewise, reduction potential. It is the tendency of a metal to accept electrons. Right? Again, the potential difference between the electrode and its ions will be called as the reduction potential. Now in this case, see here, so we can say that the reduction potential tells the, with the help of reduction potential, we can determine the ability of any metal to lose or to gain electrons. The standard oxidation potential for transition elements are higher than standard oxidation potential of hydrogen. The standard oxidation potential for transition elements are higher than the standard oxidation potential for hydrogen, except copper, silver, platinum and aurum. So standard oxidation potential means what? It is the tendency to lose electrons. So it is higher than that of hydrogen. The exceptions are copper, silver and gold. See, the standard reduction potential of hydrogen is taken as 0. What is standard reduction potential? See, in the electrochemical series, the electrode potentials are arranged in the order of their reduction potentials, right? Or they are arranged in the decreasing order of their reducing strengths. So the standard reduction potential of hydrogen is 0 and the standard reduction potential for copper, that is Cu2 plus to Cu. In the electrochemical series, these electrodes are arranged in the decreasing order of their reducing strengths, right? And according to IUPAC, the standard electrode potential is the standard reduction potential. So for copper, it is plus 0.34. Right? Now, if I take it as oxidation potential, so what will be the oxidation potential of copper? That is Cu2 plus. It will be minus 0.34. Right? And which is less than the oxidation potential of hydrogen. Okay? See, the standard reduction potential of hydrogen is taken as 0. The standard reduction potential for Cu2 plus Cu, it is plus 0.34. Whereas if I take off iron, say standard electrode potential of Fe2 plus to Fe, solid, it is minus 0.44. Right? If I'm writing it in terms of oxidation potential, Cu2 plus it is 0.34 and it with a minus sign, whereas the oxidation potential of iron Fe to Fe2 plus, it is plus 0.44. So the standard electrode this oxidation potential of iron is more than hydrogen, but the oxidation potential of copper is less than hydrogen, right? Likewise, the standard reduction potential of cobalt, it is minus 0.25. That is, its oxidation potential is more than that of hydrogen. Now, what is it saying? The transition elements having standard oxidation potential higher than standard oxidation potential of hydrogen can release hydrogen from acids. Say in the electrochemical series, students, what is there? That the electrodes, they are arranged in the order of their decreasing, reducing strengths. That is, their decreasing tendency to lose electrons, right? So if I write the I'll write 5 elements of this electrochemical series. It's iron, then is say cobalt, nickel, hydrogen, then comes here the copper, silver, copper, after that there is mercury, silver. Now in this case, the elements which are lying below, that is the decreasing, reducing strengths. It means decreasing tendency to lose electrons. So these elements will not release hydrogen gas from their acids, from respective acids, from any acid you can say. Say copper plus of HCl, hydrogen gas will not be released because copper has got less tendency to lose electrons as compared to hydrogen. But with iron, with cobalt, with nickel, hydrogen gas is released from its acid. Why? Because their tendency to lose electrons is more as compared to hydrogen. Okay? How hydrogen gas will be released? After accepting the electrons from the metals. Most of the transition metals react with acids very slowly. Why? And they act as poor reducing agents. Why? Despite their oxidation potential is more than hydrogen, still they react with acid slowly. This is because of the formation of thin protective layer of oxide. See, titanium and vanadium are passive to dilute non-oxidizing acids at room temperature. Electrode potential, we know what is it? It is the measure of the tendency for the reaction, for oxidation or for reduction. Standard electrode potentials for 3D elements. These are the standard electrode potentials. You can see that there is irregular trend, or these electrode potentials are irregular across the series. See, there is minus 2.10 and then straight away till magnesium. From minus 2.10 it goes to minus 1.60, minus 1.20, minus 0.71. So there is, say, irregular trend in this electrode potential. Why this trend is irregular? Why the standard electrode potentials of these elements across the period are irregular? Somewhere it is increasing and then it is decreasing. So it depends upon the configuration from which the electron is to be removed. Secondly, it also varies due to the variation in ionization energy and sublimation enthalpy across the period. Right? Now in case of copper, see, the standard electrode potential for copper is 0.34, that is positive. As the standard electrode potential is positive, it means that it is not able to release hydrogen gas from acids, right? The oxidizing tendency of copper is more. So it can't lose its electrons to H ions and release hydrogen gas. Moreover, say the conversion of Cu to Cu2 plus. Conversion of Cu to Cu2 plus. In this case, see, first of all, there is the formation of Cu plus ion with the release of one electron. Now the configuration of the Cu plus ion is 3d10. In order to remove this electron from the stable d orbital, a large amount of energy is required. So the conversion of this copper to Cu2 plus aqueous, it is not balanced by the hydration energy of Cu2 plus ion. Right? See what energy is released when this copper is changed to copper 2 plus ion, what all energies will be involved. First of all, there will be the sublimation energy, then there will be ionization energy, then once the ion has been formed, there will be hydration energy. So sublimation energy and ionization energy are required and hydration energy is released. So for the conversion of copper to copper 2 plus, a large amount of ionization energy is required, and also the lattice energy of copper is high. This, as you can see here, the sublimation energy of copper is also high. And the hydration energy which is released after the formation of Cu2 plus is not sufficient to overcome the ionization energies and the sublimation energy. Now the question arises that if it is so difficult to remove electron from this stable d orbital, then how come Cu2 plus ions are formed? Now students, once the Cu plus ion is formed, the hydration energy of Cu2 plus is more as compared to Cu plus, right? As compared to Cu plus I am talking about. As compared to copper, copper cannot straight away change to Cu2 plus ion. Copper will change to Cu plus ion and then there will be removal of an electron from Cu plus ion to Cu2 plus ion. It's not that straight away 2 electrons can be removed from copper. So once the Cu plus ion has been formed, it changes to Cu2 plus ion. It is the high ionization energy is required, but the hydration energy of Cu2 plus is more than Cu plus. So it is formed, though the stability is less. So these are the irregular trends of the standard electrode potential values of the transition elements. And this can be attributed to, say, the enthalpy of sublimation, the ionization enthalpy, the enthalpy of hydration also. See, there is no regular trend in electrode potential values. This is due to the irregular variation in ionization and sublimation enthalpies across the series. Relative stability of transition metal ions in different oxidation states in aqueous medium can be predicted from the electrode potential data. See, whatever is the electrode potential value, it can be predicted. Now let's illustrate with this example. Illustrated. First of all, there is sublimation energy, that is enthalpy of sublimation. Say when a metal is to be converted to its aqueous state, that is in its ion, to its ionic form in aqueous solution. What all are the steps to be done, or what all are the steps that follows? First of all, say metal exists in solid state. It changes to its gaseous state. It requires energy, and that energy is called as what? Enthalpy of sublimation. Then the gaseous state changes to its ionic state. The energy required is the ionization energy, that is, it is forming a cation. This cation in gaseous state gets hydrated, forming the aqueous ion. Now the energy required here is the enthalpy of hydration. Now if I am summing up all these equations, what am I getting is metal solid to M plus in aqueous state plus of electron. Delta H, the total enthalpy will be equal to the enthalpy of sublimation plus ionization energy plus the hydration energy. Now the point is that this delta H should be negative. For the stability of any ion, the value of delta H should be negative. That is, energy should be released. So the reaction, this reaction, that is metal solid to metal plus aqueous, will be favorable only if the sum of the enthalpy change is negative. Right? Now, the oxidation state for which delta H will be more negative will be more stable. Say if we talk of the oxidation state of iron, Fe2 plus, Fe3 plus. The more negative is the enthalpy change for any oxidation state, say the 2 oxidation state or 3 oxidation state, the more negative is the enthalpy change for any oxidation state, the more is its stability. Right? Now if I'm talking of electrode potential, so you can say that the oxidation state for which the electrode potential value, that is standard electrode potential value, is more negative, more will be its stability in solution. What does this negative oxidation state, negative electrode potential suggest? Negative electrode potential suggests that it has a tendency to lose electron. So more is the value. It is obvious, the more is its value, the more it has the ability to lose electron, and the more is its stability in the solution. Right? So stability of any oxidation state is determined by the electrode potential values. Okay? The more negative is the electrode potential, the more is its stability in the aqueous state. More is negative is the electrode potential of what? Of any oxidation state. And remember, for the formation of this aqueous ion or this hydrated ion, what all energies are required? The sublimation enthalpy, ionization energy, and enthalpy of hydration. And the sum of all these should be negative. Right? See, this is a question. This we have already discussed. Of the D4 species, Cr2 plus is strongly reducing while manganese 3 is strongly oxidizing. If you don't remember the electrode potential, then you can say that, say Cr2 plus. What is the configuration of chromium? It is 3d5,4s1. What will be the configuration of Cr2 plus? It will be 3d4. Okay. Now it is given over here. Now it easily loses its electron and forms the Cr3 plus, having the configuration 3d3. And in case of this chromium, this 3d3 configuration is stable. Moreover, from the electrode potential values, you can find that the standard electrode potential value of Cr3 plus to the Cr2 plus is about minus of 0.41. Right? That is the conversion of Cr2 plus ion, Cr2 plus forming Cr3 plus ion plus of electron. The electrode potential, the oxidation potential here is plus 0.41. I have told you that these potentials or the stability of any oxidation state depends upon the sublimation enthalpy, upon the ionization enthalpy, upon the hydration energy also. Right? So probably the hydration energy released here is more. If it's more, then the stability of chromium 3 plus ion is more. So in case of this chromium 3 plus ion, this 3 plus stability, in case of chromium, Cr3 plus is more stable than Cr2 plus. That is why it is strongly reducing. Whereas if I talk of manganese, what is the configuration of manganese? It is 3d5 4s2. Mn2 plus configuration would be 3d5 and Mn3 plus would be 3d4. So it's better that it should take up one electron and revert back to it actually does so. It takes up one electron and reverts back to 3d5 configuration. The standard electrode potential of this is Mn3 plus to Mn2 plus. It comes out to be plus 1.57. That is the oxidation of, say, Mn2 plus forming the Mn3 plus ion plus of electron is negative. That is 1.57. So the more negative is the standard electrode potential, the more is the stability of the ion in its solution, of that particular oxidation state in the solution. So that is why Mn3 plus D4 species is strongly oxidizing in nature, whereas Cr2 plus D4 species is strongly reducing. Okay? So do remember this. This is a very common question. This is one more question. The D1 configuration is very unstable in ions. Why so? Why? Say for example, we can take here scandium. The configuration is 3D14S2. It forms Sc3 plus ions. It doesn't form 2 plus ions. Because this D1 configuration is highly unstable. Why is it so? Because it prefers to lose its one electron. So what it does, it prefers to lose its only electron in the d orbital to attain extra stability of empty d level. That is why the scandium, yttrium, they form what? 3 plus ions and not a 2 plus ions. Now let's see the another property of transition elements, that is they form colored compounds. What is the reason that they are forming colored compounds? See, most of the compounds of transition elements are colored in solid state or in the solution phase. Why they are colored? They are colored because of the presence of unpaired electrons in the d orbitals. See what happens that the d orbitals, they are how many in number? They are 5. In an isolated atom or ion of transition element, all the 5 d orbitals are degenerate. That is, they are having the same energy. But what happens in the presence of any ion or electron rich molecule? These d orbitals split into 2. I'll show you. See, this is for octahedral complexes. When you'll be studying coordination compounds, you'll be discussing about this in details. These are 5 degenerate d orbitals, right? They are having similar energies. These are in the presence of electron-rich molecules. That is, molecules like ammonia, like water, like chloride ion. These are what? Ammonia. In ammonia, nitrogen has got lone pair of electrons. Water, oxygen has got lone pair of electrons. Chloride ion, it already has got electron. Now when these ions come close to these metals, what happens that there is a force of repulsion between these electrons and the molecules, the electrons present in the d orbitals and the electrons present in the molecules. Due to this repulsion, what happens? The energy of these 5d orbitals increase. And further, it leads to the crystal field splitting. That is, these 5d orbitals, they split into 2. 3 orbitals of higher energy and 2 of the lower energy. This is for octahedral complexes, right? This is reverse for the tetrahedral complexes. Now in this case, I just wanted to show you the formation of colors, or why they form colored compounds. Now, in the presence of these electron-rich molecules, they are called as ligands. In the presence of these molecules, there is splitting of the d orbitals into two. Right? Now, it is a theory. Crystal field theory states that these orbitals, say dxy, yz, and zx, these have their lobes towards the incoming ligand. Right? Say this is dxy. It's like this, right? So their lobes are towards the incoming molecule. So they face more repulsion and they attain higher energy as compared to the other two orbitals, that is dx square, y square, and dz square. So there is this difference in energy. This difference in energy depends upon the ligand only. For that, a spectrochemical series is given in which the ligands are arranged in the order of their abilities to of their decreasing or increasing energies, abilities to split the d orbitals into the decreasing or decreasing energies, right? Now here what happens? See, the 3 d orbitals are there and these are 2. These d orbitals, they contain unpaired electrons. Suppose the unpaired electrons are here. Now when what happens is these electrons may jump to the higher energy level. The difference is not much. The difference is less. It's not that the difference is very, very high. That is, it's the difference between the third. It's not the difference between the third energy level and the fifth energy level. It's the same energy level. The d orbitals have split into 2 and that energy difference is less. So these electrons, when the visible light falls on it, what happens? They jump to the higher energy level, say here. Right? When this electron comes back, it will release the energy whatever it has absorbed. Right? So it absorbs a light of any frequency, then it emits the complementary light. Okay, now the wavelength of the absorbed light depends upon the energy difference between the two levels, obviously, and rest of the light gets transmitted. The transmitted light has the color complementary to the absorbed color. This you know very well. So whatever light or whatever wavelength it is absorbing depends upon the difference in the energies of these two orbitals, of these two sets, you can say. So it absorbs some light and emits the others. This transmitted light has what? It has got a complementary color to the absorbed color. That is why these compounds, the compounds of the transition element, show color. So you can say copper, here I'll give you one example, copper plus 1 compounds are colorless. Whereas Cu2 plus compounds are colored. You must be knowing copper sulfate, where the oxidation state of copper is +2, is blue in color. That is hydrated copper sulfate. Now you got it? This hydrated copper sulfate is blue in color. Here water is the ligand. In the presence of water molecules, what happens? That the orbitals, the d5d orbitals of copper, they split into 2. Right? This split into 2 and they are giving the color. Fine. You'll be discussing about the octahedral and tetrahedral complexes in your topic, that is coordination compounds. So these 4 water molecules are linked to copper by coordinate bonds and 1 water molecule is bonded by the ionic bond. And copper 2 is colored because the configuration of Cu2 plus is 3d9. That is, it has got 1 unpaired electron. Whereas the configuration of Cu plus is 3d10. None of the electrons is unpaired. So that is why Cu2 plus compounds are colored, whereas Cu plus compounds are not colored. Zinc 2 plus compounds, that is zinc sulfate, it is not colored. So there is one reason. Your question will be, why transition elements form colored compounds? Because of the presence of unpaired d electrons. And if it's a long question, then you need to describe this also. Fine. See here, this copper H2O6, this is a complex again. These ions, they absorb red light and appear blue. Blue-green is complementary color to red. So that they absorb some wavelength depending upon the difference in the energy levels of the splitted orbitals, and they transmit the rest of them. Likewise, hydrated CO2 plus ions absorb radiation in blue-green region and therefore appear red in sunlight. This you must be knowing. Absorbed light infrared, transmitted light white. Likewise, absorbed light, if it is blue-green, transmitted light is red. So these are the some of the colors, absorbed colors and the transmitted colors of the light. Of course, this you don't need to remember. You just remember one thing: transition metals or elements form colored compounds because of the presence of unpaired electrons in the d orbitals. In the presence of ions or molecules, which are having the in the presence of ions or the molecules having lone pair of electrons, in the presence of anions and sometimes in the presence of cations, what happens that these d orbitals, they split into two, right? The difference between these two sets of orbitals is very less. Sorry, the difference in energies of these two sets of orbitals is less. These d electrons are unpaired. When they absorb light, they move to the higher orbital, right? And what they do, if they are absorbing red light, they'll transmit blue-green light. There's one more point. If radiations of all wavelengths, that is colors, except one are absorbed, then the color of the substance will be the color of the transmitted radiation. See, for example, if a substance absorbs all colors except green, then it would appear green to the eyes. This is a basic color funda you must be knowing. The transition metal ions which have completely filled d orbitals are colorless, as there are no vacant d orbitals to permit promotion of electrons. Therefore, Zn2+, Cd2, D10, 4D10, they are all forming colorless compounds. Scandium 3+, titanium 4+, copper plus ions, zinc, cadmium, mercury, they are all colorless. The transition metal ions which have empty d orbitals are also colorless. Say Sc3+, it has got empty d orbital. Ti4+ has got empty d orbital. So these are also colorless, but they can show color if at all there is a colored anion, or if there is a colored anion in the compound. So there is a one-liner answer that transition elements form colored compounds due to the presence of unpaired electrons. Now let's see some other properties. Magnetic properties. Most of the transition elements and their compounds show paramagnetism. Paramagnetism means they show magnetic property in the presence of any magnet. Why is it so? Why they show paramagnetic properties? You must be knowing that the atoms or the molecules having unpaired electrons show paramagnetic property. Now in this case also there will be a one-liner answer that as there are unpaired electrons in the d orbitals, these show paramagnetic properties. Now in this case, the paramagnetism first increases in any transition element series and then decreases. Obviously, say in any series, if I am talking about say scandium, titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc. In this case, what happens that the pairing of electrons starts after magnesium. For Fe, the configuration becomes D6, cobalt D7, nickel D8, copper D10, zinc D10. So the pairing of electrons starts. Now as the pairing is started, obviously the paramagnetic character will decrease. because this paramagnetism is due to the unpaired electron. You must be knowing that the electrons are charged particles. These charged particles, they are revolving around the nucleus and also about their own axis. So any charged particle, if it is moving around its own axis, it generates a magnetic field. Here there is a specific reason. It generates a magnetic field, and due to which there is a magnetic moment, and it shows magnetic property. This magnetic property you must have studied in your topic, that is solid state. Each electron is regarded as a micromagnet having a definite magnetic moment. The reason being the same. So its electron is a charged particle. It is revolving around the nucleus and also about its own axis, the clockwise and anti-clockwise. So it creates a magnetic field around it. So each electron is regarded as a micromagnet, and it has got a definite magnetic moment. The total magnetic moment of a substance is the resultant of moment of all such electrons. Total magnetic moment. It will be the resultant. Now the electrons are moving clockwise and anti-clockwise. If the electrons are paired, then what will happen? The magnetic moment produced by one electron will be cancelled by the other. The two magnetic moments, they will be producing magnetic fields in opposite directions. And so these two will cancel each other. But if the electron is unpaired, there will be net magnetic moment. So the total magnetic moment of a substance is the resultant of the moment of all such electrons. If the electrons are paired, the effect of these electrons is mutually compensated. Thus, only those electrons which are unpaired contribute to magnetic moment of the molecule. If such a molecule having unpaired electrons is placed in the magnetic field, each molecular magnet tends to arrange itself in parallel direction of applied field. See, each molecular magnet, it will arrange itself parallel in the direction of magnetic field. So it will get magnetized. But paramagnets, say, when they are removed from the magnetic field, the magnetic property is lost. So this alignment of the molecules, this alignment of these micromagnets, this alignment of these electrons, it is not permanent here. When it is placed in the magnetic field, these magnets tend to arrange themselves in the parallel direction to the applied field, and they get magnetized. Such molecules are known as paramagnetic, and the phenomenon as paramagnetism. Now these transition elements, that is scandium, titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese and other elements, they have unpaired electrons. Now those which have got unpaired electrons will show magnetic properties. Substances that retain magnetic properties for a short while even after removing from magnetic field are known as ferromagnetic substances. That is, their alignment, it doesn't change. Even after removing from the magnetic field, they have got that magnetic property. Such substances are called as ferromagnets. The more is the number of unpaired electrons in an ion or atom, the greater or the more is its paramagnetic nature. The paramagnetism or magnetic character produced is expressed in terms of Bohr magneton, and magnetic moment is given by square root of n into n plus 2. 1 Bohr magneton is equal to EH by 4 pi mc. What is E? E is the charge of electron, H is the Planck's constant, pi, m is the mass of electron, and c is the velocity of light. The transition metal ions containing one or more unpaired electron in them are paramagnetic, and the transition metals lacking unpaired electrons are what? Dimagnetic. You can see here the magnetic moment values. These are the calculated values, and these are the observed values. Calculated, they can be calculated by, that is the paramagnetic character, that is mu is equal to square root of n into n plus 2. N is the number of unpaired electrons. That is a calculated value, and this is observed one. You can see here that the magnetic moment value, it is increasing and then it is decreasing. Why? Because the number of unpaired electrons in this manganese is maximum, that is 3d5. And then it goes on decreasing. Mn2 plus ion, right? So the magnetic moment value across the period increases and then decreases. Right? So we have discussed about the standard electrode potential, we have discussed about the paramagnetic behavior, and also about the formation of colored compounds. See students, most of the answers of reasoning type questions from this topic rely on this sentence that the d orbitals have got unpaired electrons, which is responsible for the color of the compound, for the magnetic behavior of the compound, for the catalytic function of the compound, of these transition elements, and also the vacant d orbitals. That is responsible for what? Again, the catalytic behavior. So remember these two things, right? Now I'll be concluding this session, students. In the next session, we'll be discussing about few more properties of these transition elements, and we'll be discussing about the compounds of chromium, that is potassium dichromate, about its method of preparation and also the chemical and the physical properties. I hope you have understood the concepts. These concepts are very, very easy. Just go through the book once after listening this session and you'll be through with the concept. So thank you students for listening patiently, and do have a nice time ahead.